Every time I do these full edit videos, I gotta make sure I have some water with me because I do a lot of talking and it takes me a while to record these. But today we have a fun one. We have a studio edit, which is a little bit different. Typically, I'll do my off-camera flash work outdoors, but we're gonna do some studio editing. And I know that some of you guys mentioned that you guys want me to do a natural light edit only video, and that's gonna be coming soon. But in this tutorial, you already know we're gonna do the full edit, and we're gonna cover everything from the skin retouching to addressing the hair, the flyaways, and also getting into some of the skin tone and the stylization of the photograph. Don't forget that this is more of an intermediate tutorial, so if you're new to Photoshop, you want to check out my other videos. I have ones for dodge and burn, frequency separation, color grading, how I sharpen my images. All of that stuff is already listed on my YouTube channel. Now, if you're also new to the channel and you're barely watching this full edit, this is already part 7 of my full edit tutorial. So if you want to see more full edits, I have plenty of them on my YouTube channel. So make sure you guys subscribe. Don't forget, I did provide a raw file in the description. So if you want to follow along and try to edit along with me, you're more than welcome to. So now let's cover todo el pedo, or the whole shebang. That one sounds like super lame compared to todo el pelo. Todo el pelo has that nice, crispiness to it. I can't do it. Todo el pelo. All right, so the first thing I'm gonna wanna do is, there's a couple of things that I want to adjust. Let's go ahead and crop the bottom part. I could probably use the clone stamp, but I'm gonna just make it a little bit easier on myself. I'm just gonna raise this up because I had a little bit of the ground showing up. So I've already cropped that out. And then there's a little piece at the top. I believe this was my softbox. And the same thing, we'll just crop down just a little bit. And we're ready for the skin retouch. Now, what I love about this shot is that it's a studio shot and I don't have to worry about distractions in the background. I'm like so relieved I can just jump into the skin retouching. So I'm gonna go ahead and run my cleanup layer because I gotta run this so that my frequency separation works. And then now I'll do my frequency separation. And of course, I'm gonna go ahead and just zoom in on the skin, and I'm using the median method. So I'm gonna zoom in and I'm just gonna make sure I remove the texture. Now, typically on close-ups, the number is gonna be higher, and the further away you are, the lower the number. So looking at 14, and I'm looking at all the skin, not just the face, seems to be doing okay. There's some spots over here. I'm probably gonna maybe go 16. And you know what? I also forgot that the hair is going to be important. I have some flyaways, so I'm going to make sure that the radius number is high enough so I get rid of the hair as well, because we're going to do that first. So I'm looking around and looking that I'm going to separate the hair as texture, and I can easily fix this. There's going to be some spots where I'm not going to fix everything. So just for the heck of it, let's go 17, and I'm going to hit OK. And let's tackle the hair first. So I'm going to bring this little dialog box, open it up, and I'm going to go to my texture layer, and I'm going to zoom in, and I've separated. If I take the texture layer off, you'll see that there is just a little bit of color left, and it's okay, we'll use the mixer brush, but I've removed a lot of the hair and separated it. So basically what that means is that I'm going to go ahead and just push S on the keyboard to get my clone stamp. I'm going to make sure sample is set to current. I'm going to make sure all these settings up here are all 100%. This is from my last photo that I was doing. There we go. And I'm going to right click, make sure my hardness is around 40. I'm going to hold Alt, and I'm just going to start brushing in the texture. Any blotchy areas that I might see, we'll fix with the clone stamp. The clone stamp will maybe mask it back in, we'll see. But I don't want to remove all the hair. I just want to get some of the larger sections that are maybe a little bit popping. So let's get some of that. I could also use the clone stamp without the frequency separation to do this. So there's different ways of fixing the flyaways. Because I did this in the studio, it is a little bit easier because the background is very similar. So if I find that there's going to be some areas that I'm going to struggle with, I'll just use the regular clone stamp, which I probably am going to do. I think it'll be easier to clean these things up instead of using the mixer brush. So I'll show you what I mean right now. So I'm going to get the bigger chunks out of the way. And then I'll show you the clone stamp method with just the pixels. So I'm gonna leave some of that hair there. I'm gonna hold Alt, and then I'll go ahead and fast forward the rest of this part because I know you guys get the idea. I don't know about you guys, but I stress out a lot sometimes. I'm like, do I keep those flyaways? Do I remove them? So I removed 2 of them up here. I don't know if I should have left them, but it's okay. I'm pretty sure most of you guys want to just see the skin retouch and the color grading, but I decided to remove those 2. If you guys were editing your own image, you guys could, of course, decide what works best for you. Now, let's fix up these edges. I'm going to show you the clone stamp method. So I'm just going to make a new blank layer. I'm going to get the clone stamp, send it to current. And because I have a clean background, this is only going to work because I'm working in studio. I can just sample, actually I'm not going to do current here, I'm going to do all layers, of course. And I'm going to sample over here, and I'm just going to brush this across. And this method, I'm going to go over the hair on purpose. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a layer mask so that I can remove it. So let me show you what I mean by that. I'm going to hit this little mask button there. White means it's revealing. And now, if I get the black brush, I can just simply brush it away and make sure I have a smooth transition. So there are 2 different techniques that you can do for studio. Decide which one works best for you, frequency separation or doing it this way. There's no right or wrong. There is always multiple ways of doing things in Photoshop. So do what's best for you, and everybody will be happy. So I'm gonna go ahead and just clean this stuff up, and then we'll get into the blemish removal. All right, so I'm pretty much done with the hair. There's probably a little bit of spots I could have probably polished up a little bit, but I think you all get the overall idea and the justification for it. So I'm going to move on to the texture. I'm going to get the clone stamp. I'm going to switch it back to current layers because I just want to manipulate the texture on the skin. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to zoom in. And I'm going to get my little clone stamp and I'm going to sample similar texture so that things match up as far as the texture is concerned. Okay, so just going in, sampling pixels and brushing it over just so this stuff blends. Now I like using this blemish removal on the frequency separation. I get these questions sometimes, and I like doing it because I don't move color, I just move the texture. So that's why I prefer to do it on frequency separation. You could always do it with the healing brush on a new layer. That's totally fine. It's just up to you and what you like. So I'm just going to continue doing this, guys, and then we'll go ahead and move on to the mixer brush right after this. So now I'm going to move on to the mixer brush, and we're going to mix and kind of blend these transitions so that we get nice transitions in the skin. So I'm going to turn on my helper layers. I'm going to remove some of this contrast right here. I'm going to go about 4. And we're going to go into the color opacity adjustment and mixer brush. And it seems like every time I make a video, my mixer brush settings change. I'm always experimenting. And I think that's the key thing, guys, is that I've been trying to teach myself to like do things a little bit differently, change settings, try something a little bit different. Don't just be stuck on, okay, these are my settings and it's always going to work. So these are my new settings as of right now, 50, 30, 30, 50. And this seems to be working for me. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom in. And the purpose of the black and white is so that I can see the transitions much, much easier. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm using my Wacom tablet. And I'm just going to kind of blend these transitions and keeping respect, hopefully, to where the light placement was. I had it camera right. You can look at the catch lights.
So I'm going to smooth out the transitions. This part of the face should be a little bit brighter because that's what hit, the light hit there first. So I'm just kind of blending out these transitions. So if I remove the color layer, this is the before and then after, pretty simple so far. I'm going to spend a little bit more time with dodge and burn. I don't want to do too much frequency separation. I've had the tendency and habit of, you know, going too far a little bit at times. I'll admit my editing isn't always perfect, but you have to start to learn to embrace those mistakes, because if you're not, to me, if you're not making mistakes, then you're really not learning. You know, make the mistakes, take a look at it and just say, okay, where did I go wrong? Where did I push it too much? And then make sure you try not to make that mistake the next time. So don't be so hard on yourself. If you guys are making mistakes when you're editing, put it on Instagram, put it out there. If it looks bad, it's okay. You're going to survive more than likely after like a day or two. Nobody's going to care about the photo the next day. So I'm going to go ahead and continue working on these transitions. And then we're going to get into dodge and burn, which is my favorite method for skin retouching. And it's going to give it that nice polished look. So I like where my mixer brush settings are at. It's always a good idea to just lower your opacity. So I'm going to lower mine to about maybe 70, just in case I went too far, just to bring some of those natural shadows back. All right, so I'm going to spend a little bit more time now doing my dodge and burn and really polishing this and making it all come together. Now it's time for my favorite method for skin retouching, which is dodge and burn. So let's go ahead and run my dodge and burn action. I'm going to kind of collapse my frequency separation. We're going to go to actions and then dodge and burn and hit the little plus icon here. And what I want to adjust first is my curve for my contrast, just so that I can see those areas best. And I'm going to go to my brush tool. And I am going to go to my new Todo el Pedo brush. And like I said earlier, I've been trying new stuff. This time now I'm going 75% opacity instead of 100% opacity. And I'm going 1% flow now. So I've been trying some different stuff. So what I'm going to do now, and you guys know this by now, I'm just going to blend off these transitions. And I'm going to make sure that I'm zoomed out, because I had the bad habit with some of my edits of zooming in. Sometimes you forget. You have to remind yourself, like, hey, stop being chiflado, stop zooming in, cálmate, bájale, and stay a little bit further back, because you're going to tend to over dodge or burn areas. So try to just stay back, unless you're going in for those detailed areas, which I'm going to try not to get too zoomed in or too detailed. We'll see. But I'm just going to kind of just blend these transitions. And if you guys can't see what I'm doing, all I'm doing is that I'm adding light. So dodge means to lighten, and I'm just lightening up these darker areas so that we get these nice transitions. And I have a full video. I just did frequency separation. I forgot to mention that if you're new to frequency separation, I have a beginner level video for that. So if you were like lost and confused, I have one for that, and this dodge and burn, where I give you every single like step by step as to what I'm doing. This is more of an intermediate tutorial. This is with the understanding that you guys already know how to use Photoshop, and you guys are just kicking it back, drinking some coffee, watching me edit, and that's about it. So I'm going to go ahead and continue blend off some of these transitions, and then I'll show you the layer mask so you see exactly where I'm lightening up areas. All right, so let's take a look at what I've done so far. Let's take a look at the dodge. And I'm gonna hold Alt so that you guys can see exactly where I was doing it. So this is basically where I've dodged. And then I've also done a little bit of burn, just evening out some of those transitions. And we got that. We're gonna get into the global in a moment, but I'm gonna just double check real quick to see if I need to dodge anything else before I get into the global and burn anything. And then we'll get into the global right now. So far it's looking good. We just finished the local dodge and burn. Now we're gonna go ahead and do the global dodge and burn. We're also gonna get into the lips and also get into the eyes. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and add a separate dodge and a separate burn. And I'm gonna rename these so that I know that this is my global. So I'm just gonna put a G next to it. And this is what's gonna give me that three-dimensional pop. Now, sometimes it's difficult to know where I should bring out some of the highlights for the global. So I've been doing this trick lately. I've been adding a threshold layer. And when I move this slider, it starts showing me exactly where the light is coming from. So right now it's telling me, okay, the brightest part is gonna be the nose. So I'm gonna add a swipe or so on the nose. Then I'm gonna need to come into the cheek in this kind of almost angle here. And then right on the forehead, this is where this gets most of the light there. So what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna make a new layer. I'm just gonna get a random color here. Let's get blue, brush, and let's just increase the flow here. And I'm gonna just have like a visual reference. I'm gonna need to come down here. And then the dodge is gonna be more or less right about here, and it's gonna be brightened right around there. So I'm gonna take the threshold off. I'm gonna lower the opacity of this, and this is where I'm gonna need to add my global. So I'm gonna go with my global. I'm gonna add maybe about, let's do 4. Let's wing it here. All right, so now I have my blue, which is my reference, which is gonna tell me where I need to add that global. And I'm just gonna add a swipe down, a couple of swipes. This one too, just a couple of swipes here. And then right here under the eye, and then I'm gonna get a bigger brush just so it's a smoother transition. Right there. So let me take off this reference, and that is my global to make things pop just a little bit right about there, okay? Because that's where naturally the light was getting brighter. So I'm gonna turn on my threshold again, and I'm gonna move this up, and you can see that it should transition off to the shadow because I had my light camera, right? Of course. So obviously this should be bright. And where else is it getting brighter? So I'm gonna need to come into the top part of the lip and then also the chin. So I'm just gonna add a visual reference here. Doesn't have to be perfect. I'm just using this as a marker. Once again, it doesn't have to be like super perfect, but just so that we get the general idea of where this light should be. And let me take off the threshold. And let me go back to the dodge global. And just a couple of swipes here. And just a couple of swipes there. Take this off. And so we should have that natural pop in those areas. And once again, if I feel like I went too far, I can always get the black brush because I feel like this part doesn't need to be that bright. I'm going to lower that down a little bit. And then I can decide later on if I want to brighten up some of these areas, but I'm not just yet, okay? I'm going to go into my burn, and I know for sure that I want to make this cheekbone pop a little bit more, so I'm definitely going to add some there. I'm going to add some underneath the chin, and it would be nice, Eli, if you were with the white brush. I have a habit of doing that. So I'm going to make sure I'm with the white brush. Loser! And we're going to now add that. I'm over here all trying to be all cool, like, oh yeah, I'm going to add the global burn, and nothing's even going on. So yes, so now I'm just gonna go in, we're just gonna add some darkening here, right about there. There should be a darken just a little bit here. And then I'm just gonna get a bigger brush and just transition it off a little bit in this direction. And we're gonna come into the nose a little bit, and we're just gonna add just like one little swipe right there. Okay. And let's see what we have so far. So I'm gonna actually group this so that I can just see what the global is doing. So far, this is what the global is doing. Digging it so far, looks fine. Still got to do some more work to it though. So we're gonna go back to the dodge. We're gonna get into the hair now, but with the hair, I am gonna bring the settings up a lot more. So we're gonna go about 10, and we're going to brighten up that natural highlights in the hair, which is right about here, and here, and about there. We're also gonna come in here and just brush only in the highlights. Okay. This will kind of add some volume to the hair and some nice shine. Perfect. Let me zoom out here. Let's see what that did to the hair, and gave that hair that nice little pop. I'm gonna go into my burn. I am gonna kind of burn some of these little shadowed areas just a little bit. We're not gonna get too crazy. Hopefully I don't screw it up. If I screw it up, y'all can let me know in the comments. You can be like, Eli, la cagué. Ya la cagaste. Okay, there we go. Oh, I forgot. We haven't even got to the lips, and we haven't even got to the eyes yet. So I'm gonna leave this here. I'm gonna make a separate one. We're gonna go dodge. And we're gonna name this lips. Now I'm being a little bit more specific on this tutorial because when you do like studio stuff, you know, like all these details, they're a little bit more prominent because with the studio shot, it's more of a close-up. So you're gonna have to spend, or at least I like to spend, I shouldn't say you should have to. I like to spend a little bit more time on these details. As you're watching this tutorial, you pick and choose what you like and what you don't like. You might look at some of the stuff that I'm doing, you'll be like, damn, Eli, that sucks. And that's totally fine. Then just don't do that part. Maybe I went a little bit too far on some parts, and that's a-okay. You kind of edit the way your style, you edit to your style and your preference. And you kind of just use my tutorial as a reference and pick and choose the things that you really feel like is going to work best with your workflow, because everybody has different philosophies when it comes to editing. So I'm just adding some volume underneath the lips. I'm just adding a little bit of darkness right there. Same thing over here. I'm gonna add, there we go. And I'm just gonna maybe tweak the nose just a little bit real quick. Now that we've already focused on the lips, I'm gonna now zoom into the eyes, and we're gonna remove the veins, and then we're gonna add some nice exposure to the eyes. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add a new layer. We're gonna name this eye. I guess not fix, but you know, we're just gonna remove those veins here. And so sometimes this is tricky. I'm gonna use the healing brush tool. I'm gonna get a smaller brush, and I'm simply going to just brush some of these parts away. There we go. And let's come to this eye and we'll do the same thing. There we go. Wonderful. All right. So now it's time to add some exposure to those eyes and make them pop a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new curves. And I'm going to jump this right about here. Press Control I on the keyboard. We're going to name this eye. And I am going to, we'll leave the settings just like that. we'll get the brush and we'll go ahead and add a little bit of light here. Because the light's coming in from camera right, you guys should know this already. We're gonna add just a little bit of light on this side of the eye. I'm gonna add just a little bit of exposure into the eye as well here. On this side, we're not gonna add too much light actually, because this is the dark side. The dark side, like Star Wars. And we're going to just add a little bit of light on this side. Okay, now I'm gonna brush some of it off. I'm gonna get the black brush and kind of just make sure the angle works better. There we go. And I think that works. Looks good. We're just gonna lower the overall opacity to maybe, let's go about 50. Let's see what that looks like. Zoomed in, before, after. I can live with that. That works for me. So let's take a look at the overall dodge and burn. And let's see the whole skin retouch together. So this is our skin retouch. What I'm gonna do right now, guys, is I'm gonna take my time. I'm just gonna double check everything because the skin retouch, especially for a studio shot, is gonna be really important. I wanna just make sure I didn't miss any spots, maybe some transitions that might be off a little bit. I'm gonna kind of go check those real quick. And then we'll move on to the color grading and the kind of stylization that we're gonna get for the rest of this image. One of the things I am gonna come back and do is come back into my global and I'm gonna burn some of the clothes. Some of the parts of the clothes are a little bit bright because it's white, of course. So I'm just gonna kind of come in here and just tone down that overall exposure. So I'm gonna switch my brush to white. We'll keep the same flow. You know what, we'll bring the flow down a little bit. We'll go to 3. And I'm also going to exaggerate some of these shadows already here. They're already in the image. And I'm going to adjust this exposure on the little shirt. And just try to tone it down just a little bit so we don't draw too much attention to that top. Yeah, and that looks much better. Wonderful. So now we're ready to go into our skin retouch. I'm going to go ahead and collapse everything now. And now we're going to get into the color grading of the skin. And you know my favorite technique, which is the selective color. So let's get into selective color. I'm going to go right here to my adjustments and we're going to go selective color. What I'm going to do is I'm going to press Control I. I already know that this is going to be color grade specifically for the skin tone. So I'm just going to brush it in. And I already have the settings that I saved when I edited this image for the first time. So I'm going to come in here and I think I can push the backslash key. There we go. And what I want to do is I'm just going to brush with white and just show more or less where I want this color grade to be. If I get the eyebrows, it'll be okay, just because there is no red in that specific part, so it's not going to be the end of the world. We'll be okay. Let's get the ears, and if I get a little bit of the hair as well, it'll be fine, because when I use selective color, it's almost like using a mask almost. It's only going to like affect the reds and the yellows. So since the skin tone kind of lays in that range, it won't affect the hair so much. So I'm just going to come in through here. And because I'm editing this for the second time, I'm doing this kind of quick. So those of you that are shaking your head right now saying, Eli, what are you doing, bro? You're not even getting precise. It's okay. I've already edited this image. You guys should know when you're doing your images, you'd probably be a little bit more precise. But I got to move on, man. This is my second time editing this. You know how tricky it is and how much of a challenge to edit the image the second time is? You're like, oh my gosh, I got to top the first edit. It's so nerve-wracking. Even though I already have the settings, but still, like you have to redo the skin retouching. Sometimes it comes out better the first time. Sometimes it comes out better the second time. So we'll see. Okay. So once again, you guys get the idea. So I'm going to push the backslash key. We've already selected basically the skin. If I notice any mistakes, I can always come back in the mask and clean that up. So let's get into the reds. My red numbers were -8, 4, 5, and 5. Okay. Now, if you want to know what selective color is all about, it uses the digital color wheel. And I talk about that in one of my YouTube videos. So if you want an in-depth look into how selective color works, check that out. It's going to be in the description. We're going to go 3 here. We're going to go 5. And we're going to go 10. Bam. So let's take a look at the before and after. Before, after. Just adds those nice little rich tones to the skin. So that's looking nice. I'm digging that. Looks really cool. Then I'm going to run my gradient map action. So I have this new gradient map. Those of you that have purchased my actions, I'm going to give you an update pretty soon. And I want to say it's this one, gradient map. Boom. Yes, it is. I'm just going to copy this little mask that I made. I'm going to hold Alt and drag it up so I don't have to do it all over again. Yes, I want to replace it. Perfect. Okay. So now this color grade's only there. So it's going to make the skin glow, but it's too much right now. I set it around maybe 5. I think on this one for today's image, we'll go about 7. Yeah, 7 looks good. It's just a subtle difference. It just kind of makes the skin glow ever so slightly. So let's just take a look at the color grade of the skin before, after. Just a small difference. I'm going to rename this skin color grade. The next step is to use curves. Curves is one of my favorite tools to use for color grading and also making things pop in the image. Now, I'm not going to recreate this curve because it wasn't complex, but it's going to take me some time. So I just saved it in my libraries. Let's take a look at what I did. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is go into my libraries, and then everything is missing. Is it this one over here? This one? OMG. Ah, my library. Loser. There we go. And right here is tar button color grade. We're going to click. I'm going to make sure I hold Alt on the keyboard, and there we go. So this is the color grade that I added to really make her pop. So what exactly did you do, Mr. Eli? Well, let's go into my properties. I added a little curve. You can see here on the RGB, and then specifically on the reds, I added a curve that looks like that. The greens and the blues. Okay. So as I look at this for the second time, I feel like it's a little too strong. I'm going to just tone it down. Let's go 65. We'll be kind of relatively close to where we're at, but we'll go 65. All right. And now we're going to go into my raw Vataloco action. We're going to merge everything all up together. And then I did some stuff in Camera Raw, and we'll take a look at those settings. So let's let that load. We're going to jump into Camera Raw. And what I'm going to do, this is the new Camera Raw, by the way. So things might look a little bit different on your screen. Don't freak out. If you need to get the update, we're going to go presets. And I had already made one, tar button YouTube. Here it is. Bam. And I'm going to go back to my editing section. And let's just quickly look at what I did. I did the shadows 3, clarity 1, vibrance 1, nothing on the curves, sharpening 59, details. This should be at 0. I made a mistake there. So I'm going to bring that back up. Let's go 60. There we go. All right. And then we're going to go blues 25, -1 on the saturation, luminance, bringing these up mainly because this is the skin tone. I might come back here actually and bring this up just a little bit. That looks fine. And then the highlights, I added some blue tones, shadows, I added some orange tones. And then of course, my good old faithful calibration. I'm going to bring this down. I feel like the colors are too much. I'm also going to bring the saturation down of the reds here. So I'm going to bring it back to -1 here. So let's take a look at the before and after. Yeah, it's looking good. Now I'm going to try something a little different here that I didn't do the first time. Single view, there we go. me see if I can find it because this stuff's kind of different. There we go. I'm gonna add a radial filter just like this. And I'm gonna angle it like this because the light was coming in from camera right. I was doing some Rembrandt lighting. And what I wanna do is, I'm gonna get the feather up a little bit. And I wanna darken the outside of it. So I'm gonna come over here and I'm gonna see if I can find it. Where is it? Invert, yay, there we go. So I wanna darken the edges of it. Sorry, I'm just a little lost because this is like a new update. So I'm gonna go about maybe negative 15 on the exposure so that she can pop. So this corner got darkened, this corner got darkened, and I'm liking that. So I'm gonna go ahead and go back to the edit section, and I might bring up the exposure just a little bit. Let's go right there and hit OK. And now we're set. We're done with the camera raw. So before and then the after, just a small little difference, small little pop. Because this is a studio shot, I want to add just a little bit more volume into the hair. So I'm going to use the liquify tool. So if I go into filter and we go into liquify, I want to add just a little bit more volume into the hair and make sure I kind of straighten out any edges. So I'm going to come over here and we're going to bring some of this out just like that. And I'm noticing that my hair, when I cleaned it up at the beginning, didn't come out perfect, but like I said, you all got the general idea. Of course, when I did my final edit the first time, I took my time. But basically, I just want to kind of smooth out everything, make sure it kind of has a nice little overall edge. Okay. And then some of these areas, I might bring up the hair just a little bit because when it comes to the girls, guys, we don't understand this. Girls love their hair. They really want to show off that hair. So I want to make sure that this hair really pops and we have a little bit of nice volume. So take care of the hair. The hair is very important. So we're going to do that. And I'm going to just push this in ever so slightly. There we go. And I'm going to hit OK. And it's just a small little detail, but it adds that nice little kind of volume pop to the hair. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to run my red loom action. I don't use this all the time, but sometimes it comes in the clutch. And then on this image, it really came in the clutch and I loved it. So it is a little bit strong. So I'm definitely going to bring this down. I'm going to dial it back, maybe go 30%. It just adds that little kind of pop to the image, really brings out those highlights where the highlights should have been. And I might even go down a little bit more. Let's go 22 just to be on the safe side. And then what I'm going to do next is I'm going to add some details to the eyes. I'm going to go to my details sharpen action. I'm going to go ahead and run that. And I'm going to zoom into the eyes. And I'm going to get the white brush and I'm just going to click once and it's going to bring out those details and it's going to make that pop. Okay. I'm going to mask this out. It added kind of like a pixelation to that part. So I take that off. So cool. Just a small little detail there. I'm going to go into my levels and see if I need to add any kind of levels pop to the image. So I'm going to bring this in and it does need a little bit of levels. So I'm going to bring this in. I don't want to bring it in too much. If I go about here, well, actually it looks kind of good right about there. Let's bring it in a little bit more. It's all about training your eyes. Sometimes, you know, you might go a little bit too far. Let me bring this back. Ah, that's what it is. We got to bring back those midtones. That's looking cool. Right, that. And let's just take a look at the before and after. Yeah, so it definitely does need this. I'm going to pull this back just a little bit. Just like that. Hit the eyeball and before and then after. Beautiful. We're almost done with this image. We're going to do color balance to kind of finalize the skin a little bit and the overall tones of the image. We'll see if it looks good the second time I edit the image, and if it doesn't, we'll just leave it out. So I'm going to go ahead and go into my color balance. I'm going to go to image, apply image, and hit OK. So it'll add a little mask for me here. Then I'm going to go into my midtones. I'm going to add -2 and then 6. We're going to go into the highlights, 0, 0, and then 5. And let's take a look at the overall, and definitely, I do like it. I noticed that the skin was a little bit too yellow, and this kind of toned it down just ever so slightly. So added a nice little touch to the overall image. So let's take a look. I want to look back at the levels and see how it really made the image pop. Now, one of the things I did notice that I did forget is that as I was bringing out that highlights, I'm also bringing out the highlights here. So I'm definitely going to mask that away. So I'm going to get the brush tool. I'm going to set it to black. And because I'm on the mask, I'm going to remove that brightness adjustment for sure on the shirt here. And I'm going to be a little careful because I don't want to get on the skin. So right about there. Okay. So the before and then the after. I'm going to bring it down just a little bit now because I don't want, I think I brought it down. There you go. And so overall, that pretty much finalizes our image. Let's take a look. Let's do a full view of the before and then the after. We'll zoom in now so you can see some of the details. We'll take a look at the before and then the after. Now, if I wanted to, let's see if this looks good. I'm going to add a new layer. I'm going to add the brush tool. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add like a little like spotlight up here on the top right. Let me see what this might look like because it was coming from camera right. Let's see what that looks like. Now, obviously that looks terrible. I'm just going to bring down my opacity and just a little bit at 2. Just an optional step. Why not? YOLO. And we'll leave it. And that pretty much concludes the tutorial. Let's take a look at it one more time, before and the after.
Thank you guys for watching, and don't forget to subscribe because you don't want to miss the upcoming content that I have. Peace out.